Am I the asshole for choosing my bio parents over my adoptive family after they blocked my real mother from finding me for 26 years? Hey, before we move on to the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thanks. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I'm honestly at my breaking point and need to tell someone what happened to me. Everyone keeps telling me I'm being ungrateful and dramatic, but I can't shake the feeling that what my family did to me was unforgivable. Maybe getting this out will help me process everything. It all started 6 months ago when I decided to do one of those DNA ancestry tests. I was 26 and had always been curious about our family history since my parents, Carol and Dave, were pretty vague about their backgrounds. I thought it would be fun to surprise them with some cool discoveries about our heritage for Christmas. When the results came back, I was confused at first. The test showed I had close DNA matches with people I'd never heard of. Not distant cousins or anything like that, but people who should have been immediate family members. I figured there was some mistake, or maybe these were relatives my parents had lost touch with. But then I got a message through the DNA site from a woman named Patricia Miller. She said she'd been looking for her biological daughter who was born on March 15, 1997 at St. Mary's Hospital. That was my exact birthday and birthplace. She asked if I might be willing to talk because she'd been searching for her daughter for almost 30 years. My hands were literally shaking as I read her message. I thought about how I'd always felt different from my family. Not just physically, though that was obvious. Carol and Dave both had dark hair and brown eyes, while I was blonde with green eyes. They always said I got it from some distant relative, but looking back, their explanation was always kind of vague and dismissive. More than that though, I'd always felt like an outsider in my own family. My parents had 2 other kids, my older brother Marcus and younger sister Ginny, and they all seemed to connect in ways I never could. They had similar interests, similar personalities, similar ways of seeing the world. I was always the odd one out, the one who liked different music, different books, who wanted to travel while they were all homebodies. I decided to meet Patricia at a coffee shop downtown. The second I walked in and saw her, I knew. She looked exactly like me, just 30 years older. Same blonde hair, same green eyes, same smile. She started crying the moment she saw me, and honestly, so did I. Patricia told me her story. She'd given birth to a daughter at St. Mary's in 1997, but there had been complications and she'd been unconscious for several hours after delivery. When she woke up, the nurses brought her a baby, but something felt wrong. The baby looked different than she expected, had different features. But the hospital staff assured her that newborns often look different than parents expect, and she was young and scared and trusted them. She raised that daughter, Hannah, for 2 years before growing suspicions led her to demand a DNA test. The test confirmed her worst fears. Hannah wasn't her biological child. The hospital admitted there had been a terrible mix-up in the nursery during a particularly busy night. 2 baby girls born hours apart had been switched. But here's where it gets heartbreaking. By the time Patricia discovered the truth, Hannah's biological parents, my parents Carol and Dave, had already been contacted by the hospital. They were given the choice of whether to switch us back or keep the children we'd all grown attached to. Patricia wanted to switch back. She wanted her biological daughter back and was willing to return Hannah to her biological parents so we could all be with our real families. But Carol and Dave refused. They said they bonded with me and didn't want to disrupt my life or Hannah's life. They told the hospital they wanted to keep things as they were. Patricia begged them to at least allow some kind of relationship, maybe shared custody or regular visits, but they said no. They moved to a different state shortly after and changed their contact information. Patricia spent the next 24 years trying to find me. She hired private investigators, kept in touch with the hospital hoping they'd help her reconnect with me, and eventually turned to DNA testing as a last resort. As she told me this story, I felt like my entire world was collapsing. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. But more than that, I felt this incredible sense of loss for the relationship I should have had with this woman who was my actual mother. I asked Patricia about Hannah, and she showed me pictures. Hannah looked just like Carol and Dave, dark hair and brown eyes, and Patricia said she was a wonderful young woman who was studying to be a teacher. Patricia had clearly loved and raised Hannah as her own, but she'd never stopped grieving for the daughter she'd lost. We spent 4 hours talking that day. Patricia told me about her life, her family, my biological father Richard, who she'd married a few years after I was born. She showed me pictures of my half-siblings, my biological grandparents who were still alive and had been hoping to meet me someday. I felt this incredible connection with her that I'd never felt with Carol and Dave. When I got home that night, I was emotionally exhausted but also excited. I thought Carol and Dave would be shocked by the news, but that ultimately they'd understand why I wanted to build a relationship with my biological family. After all, this wasn't anyone's fault. It was just a terrible mistake that we could finally start to fix. I was so wrong. When I told Carol and Dave what I discovered, their reaction was immediate and hostile. Dave got angry and accused me of trying to replace them with a richer family. Carol started crying and saying I was being manipulated by strangers who just wanted to use me. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to replace them, that I just wanted to get to know my biological family too. I said I loved them, and they'd always be my parents, but I also wanted to understand where I came from and build relationships with people I was related to. That's when Carol dropped the bombshell. She admitted they'd known about the mix-up all along. Not only that, but they'd known exactly how to find Patricia and had been deliberately avoiding her for years. Patricia had tried to contact them multiple times, and they'd ignored her letters, changed phone numbers, and eventually moved states to get away from her. I was stunned. I asked why they'd never told me, and Dave said they were protecting me from confusion and manipulation. Carol said Patricia was probably mentally unstable and obsessed, and that biological relationships didn't matter as much as the family who actually raised me. But the worst part was what they told me next. They said if I insisted on having a relationship with Patricia, they'd cut me off completely. They said I had to choose between them and those people because they wouldn't tolerate being disrespected and replaced after everything they'd done for me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were asking me to choose between the parents who raised me and the mother who'd been searching for me for 26 years. It felt like emotional blackmail. I told them I needed time to think, and that's when things got really ugly. Carol started calling other family members, telling them I was being brainwashed by strangers and abandoning the family that loved me. She painted Patricia as some kind of predator who was trying to steal me away with promises of money and a better life. Marcus and Jenny both called me within hours, furious. They accused me of being selfish and hurting our parents for no reason. Marcus said I was acting like a spoiled brat who thought I was too good for our family. Jenny said I was breaking Mom's heart, and that if I really loved them, I'd stop this nonsense immediately. But I couldn't stop. Meeting Patricia had answered so many questions I'd had my whole life. For the first time, I understood why I felt different, why I never quite fit in with Carol and Dave's family. I wasn't broken or weird. I just belonged somewhere else. I started spending time with Patricia and gradually meeting my biological family. My biological father, Richard, was kind and intelligent, a college professor who loved books and traveled just like I did. My half-siblings were warm and welcoming, excited to have a big sister they'd only heard stories about. My biological grandparents cried when they met me and said they'd prayed for this day for decades. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was with people who truly understood me. We had similar interests, similar ways of thinking, similar dreams. It wasn't about money or status like Carol and Dave kept claiming. It was about finally feeling like I belonged somewhere. But the more time I spent with my biological family, the more hostile Carol and Dave became. They started spreading rumors in our hometown that I was abandoning them for a wealthier family. They told people Patricia had bribed me or that I was having some kind of mental breakdown. The breaking point came 3 months ago at my cousin's wedding. Carol and Dave were there, and when people asked where I was, Carol loudly announced that I was too busy with my new family to care about the people who actually raised me. She said I'd been stolen away by people who were using me and that she felt sorry for me because I was being manipulated. Several relatives came up to me later and said I should be ashamed of myself for hurting Carol and Dave like this. They said blood didn't matter as much as love, and that I was being selfish and ungrateful. What hurt the most was that nobody seemed to care about Patricia's side of the story. Nobody seemed to understand that she'd been robbed of 26 years with her biological daughter and that she deserved to have a relationship with me too. It was all about protecting Carol and Dave's feelings and maintaining the status quo. Things got even worse when I found out what Carol had been doing behind my back. She'd somehow gotten Patricia's phone number and had been calling her, telling her to stay away from me. Carol told Patricia that I was just going through a phase and that she was hurting me by encouraging this fantasy of a different life. Patricia showed me some of the voicemails Carol had left. In them, Carol called Patricia a homewrecker and accused her of trying to destroy a happy family. She said Patricia was selfish for not just accepting that I belonged with the people who raised me and that she needed to let go of her obsession with me. I was furious. Carol had no right to interfere in my relationship with Patricia like that. I confronted her about it, and she didn't even deny it. She said she was protecting me from making a mistake that would ruin my life, and that Patricia needed to understand that I already had a family. That's when I realized that Carol and Dave weren't going to change. They saw Patricia as a threat to their control over me, and they were willing to sabotage my happiness to maintain that control. They didn't care about what was best for me or what I wanted. They only cared about their own feelings and their own version of what our family should look like. I made the decision to go no contact with Carol and Dave 2 months ago. I told them that their ultimatum and their sabotage of my relationship with Patricia was unacceptable, and that until they could respect my choices and my biological family, I wouldn't be speaking to them. The reaction was explosive. Carol called me crying and begging, saying she was sorry and that she'd do anything to fix things. But when I asked if she'd be willing to apologize to Patricia and stop interfering in our relationship, she said she couldn't do that because she was just trying to protect me. Dave was angrier. He called me ungrateful and said I was throwing away 26 years of love and sacrifice for people who were essentially strangers. He said I'd regret this decision when I realized that Patricia and Richard only wanted me around because I was a novelty and that they'd get bored of me eventually. Marcus and Ginny have both cut me off too. Marcus said I made my choice and now I had to live with it. Ginny said she was disgusted by how I'd treated our parents and that she never wanted to see me again. The extended family has mostly taken their side. I've been uninvited from family gatherings and blocked on social media by most of my cousins and aunts and uncles. A few have reached out privately to say they understand my position, but they won't say anything publicly because they don't want to cause more drama. It's been incredibly painful, but I don't regret my decision. My relationship with Patricia and my biological family has been one of the most healing experiences of my life. For the first time, I understand who I am and where I come from. I feel like I'm finally living authentically instead of trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me. Patricia has been amazing through all of this. She's never pressured me to choose her over Carol and Dave or said anything negative about them, even after the horrible things Carol said to her. She just keeps telling me that she's grateful for whatever relationship we can have and that she supports whatever decisions I make. But last week, Carol made one more attempt to reconcile. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, crying and begging me to come home. She said the family wasn't the same without me and that she was sorry for everything that had happened. I thought maybe this was finally the breakthrough we needed. I told her I missed her too and that I wanted to work things out, but that she needed to respect my relationship with Patricia and stop trying to sabotage it. Carol seemed to agree at first. She said she understood why I wanted to know my biological family and that she'd been wrong to interfere. But then she said the thing that made me realize nothing had really changed. She said she could accept me having a relationship with Patricia as long as I understood that she and Dave were my real parents and that Patricia was just a bonus family member. She said she needed me to publicly acknowledge that Carol and Dave had done the hard work of raising me and that they deserved the primary loyalty and love. Essentially, she wanted me to agree to a hierarchy where she and Dave came first and Patricia came second. She wanted me to promise that if there was ever a conflict between what Carol wanted and what Patricia wanted, I'd choose Carol. I told her I couldn't agree to that. I said all the parents in my life deserved respect and love, and that I wasn't going to rank them or choose sides in hypothetical conflicts. I said what I wanted was for everyone to get along and respect each other, not for me to declare one family more important than the other. Carol got angry again and said I was still being manipulated by Patricia. She said if I couldn't put the family that raised me first, then I didn't really love them at all. She stormed out and I haven't heard from her since. I know some people reading this will think I'm being ungrateful or that I should just give in to keep the peace. But I can't accept a relationship built on ultimatums and control. Carol and Dave had 26 years to tell me the truth about my origins and chose to lie instead. They had multiple opportunities to handle this situation with grace and chose sabotage instead. Most importantly, they're asking me to hurt Patricia in order to protect their own feelings. Patricia lost 26 years with me through no fault of her own. She deserves to have a relationship with me without interference or conditions. I won't let Carol and Dave rob her of any more time with me just because they're uncomfortable with sharing. I'm building a beautiful relationship with my biological family while grieving the loss of the people who raised me. It's complicated and painful, but I know I'm doing the right thing. I just wish it didn't have to be this way. The saddest part is that there was room for everyone in my life. Patricia never wanted to replace Carol and Dave. She just wanted to know me and be part of my life. If they'd been secure enough to allow that, we could have all been one big, complicated, loving family. Instead, their jealousy and need for control destroyed any chance of that happening. I don't know if Carol and Dave will ever change their minds, but I'm done waiting for them to come around. I'm focused on building the relationships that bring me joy and peace, and letting go of the ones that only bring me pain and manipulation. For anyone else dealing with something similar, I guess my advice is to trust your instincts. Family isn't just about who raised you or who shares your DNA. It's about who respects you, supports you, and wants what's best for you even when it's hard for them. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are actually the ones holding you back from being truly happy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button.